You know, estrogen is kind of like those Sour Patch Kids commercials. Like, first it's like really, really like bad, and then they're also really, really good. And you know, honestly, estrogen just gets a bad rap sometimes. But the fact is that we do have to understand how estrogen truly is in the body. And if we know how it works, then we can have a little bit more, well, I guess respect for the good things it does in the body, but also have a lot more of a vengeance when it comes down to trying to get rid of the bad forms of estrogen.
What?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I've seen a lot of guys crush estrogen throughout their entire cutting phases or contest preps because they think that is inhibiting their fat loss, when in reality it's the fucking opposite.
What?
Absolutely.
Wow.
These days, there's a lot of discussion around, oh, you know, if your testosterone's too high, then, you know, it converts to estrogen, and that creates these effects like, you know, gynecomastia, growth of the male breast tissue, reduction in libido, all these things. Most of those effects are not actually caused by estrogen. This is a common misconception. During development, the testes give off testosterone, no surprise there. But the actual masculinization of traits within the brain, and there are certain traits that anatomically you can see. Masculinization of the brain is not by testosterone. It's by testosterone that's aromatized, converted into estrogen. So estrogen is actually what masculinizes the male brain.
What?
Absolutely.
Wow.
When you have estrogen dominance, your prostate could start to enlarge. So estrogen is an anabolic hormone. It grows things.
The secrets of estrogen and bodybuilding. My friends of freedom, I'm making this video specifically for you. Those of you that are seeing this are the first ones to see this video before anybody else, because it's a very important topic about estrogen, where it fits into the anabolic matrix, what happens when estrogen's too high, what happens when it's too low, the optimal estrogen range for fat loss versus the optimal estrogen range for bodybuilding and building muscles. First, we don't want to get rid of estrogen completely because there's some health benefits. Cardiovascular health, bone health, fertility, and nitric oxide, which is also bodybuilding health benefit and also impacts heart health. For bodybuilding, benefiting muscle building for estrogen, it helps with volumization, which is part of the anabolic matrix. All these are different growth pathways or contributing factors to growth that work in a synergy. Volumization, by increasing estrogen, causes strength gain, nutrient delivery, and fascia stretching, all of which help build muscle, make us look and feel fuller. And then also estrogen helps in the development and activation of new muscle cells or upgrading the current muscle cells, so actually directly building muscle. The estrogen also combines with HGH and insulin to make IGF, which is possibly the most powerful muscle building hormone. And estrogen also helps with glycogen retention, how much carbohydrates, how much glycogen you can fit in the muscle, which also massively increases your performance and therefore also your ability to gain muscle. But you also, Akash, you've coached a lot of people, and I've done a lot of experiments. We have a ton of experience with estrogen. What happens, Akash, when you have your athletes cut out their estrogen or lower their estrogen completely? First of all, how do you cause them, before a bodybuilding competition, to drop their estrogen?
Really just letrozole is the easiest way to go, especially 3 to 7 days out of a show. But prior to that, just exemestane, anastrozole, things of that nature. But, to piggyback off Tony's question, when your estrogen's like that low, a lot of people freak out. I want to emphasize that you can crash your estrogen and zero that out for like 3 to 5 days. And, it's not the healthiest thing in the world, but pre-contest, the benefits of just, getting super dry, zero water retention. Yes, you're not going to be able to build any muscle, but who cares? At that point, it's just to get as shredded as possible. So for 3 to 5 days, the body can come back from that, guys. It's these durations of length and, frankly, people unintentionally crashing their estrogen or leaving it too high. That's actually the problem. So don't be afraid of crashing estrogen. Just make sure you know what you're doing.
So crashing estrogen to zero is going to cause flat muscles, which for a bodybuilding competition, there's some benefit in have some estrogen because it helps muscle fullness, but at the same time, the estrogen holds water. You have to balance
so many
that.
drugs in the mix to offset that. You have to take that into consideration too. Yeah. Pump up everything, carbs.
Yeah. Inability to gain muscle if there's too little estrogen. The benefits, though, is it's much easier to burn fat, and you lose all the water. You get that dry, hard look. So those are benefits of estrogen being too low. But estrogen being too low also means probably a low sex drive, low energy, low motivation, makes it really hard to train as it gets closer to competition. Of course, one of the reasons why bodybuilders get weak for a competition, besides losing the water from other drugs, is because their estrogen is so low, and then they're taking more anabolics and androgenics specifically to get that strength and motivation back in the gym. Now, what happens when your clients or you have taken too much estrogen, Akash?
I don't want to say it that like taken too much, as in failed to impede
so you've
the amount of.
You've actually never taken direct estrogen.
No, I have not fed myself extra.
So the way that you're getting estrogen is from the conversion of testosterone or other steroids.
That's what's happening. So when the testosterone conversion to estrogen is too high, gyno. All right, that's the main thing. That's most people end up happening. Three main situations are gyno, acne, and hair loss.
Oh,
and whatnot.
acne. That's a good one. I should have put that. Yeah.
Oh well, whatever. Now you guys know.
So yeah, I put on my list gyno, gaining fat. When your estrogen's high, it's really easy to gain fat. Holding water in 3 different places. Subcutaneous is underneath the skin. That messes up with muscle definition, but it doesn't have any health implications. But there's other types of water retention people don't see. They feel, hopefully, and understand that it's not healthy. It's putting pressure on the body, and that's water retention around the heart and the organs. So if you see a bodybuilder that's big and puffy and holding a lot of water, and we're talking about what side effects they're experiencing
in their face,
or potential, it's the most danger they're causing to their health is probably the pressure on their organs, not any of the steroids. It's probably the estrogen that's causing too high of estrogen and too much water retention, also from things like growth hormone and insulin, that's causing the pressure on their organs, which is the worst side effect they're having, not from the steroid. Some people with too much estrogen get emotional, or they have low libido and they have depression. I don't experience that from high estrogen. I seem to feel fine on high estrogen, but I do feel like total crap if my estrogen is too low. And here's some of the experiments that I've done, and then we're going to talk about different estrogen levels. So I've done zero estrogen before, so I've experienced all these side effects of zero estrogen. I've also had 44 times the normal amount of estrogen in my body. The highest estrogen rating I've ever seen on blood work, and I've seen a lot of bodybuilders' blood work, was my blood work when I was doing an experience on really high dosages of things without taking enough aromatase inhibitors. And I've also done SARM cycles where I let my estrogen drop really low to see how much muscle I can gain. And what's most notable and what made me realize how important estrogen was is when I was on a SARM cycle, I was doing pretty good. I was looking lean and shredded. People would have thought I was on Winstrol and Anavar. My strength was pretty good. But I thought, you know what, my estrogen is low, and I feel like I'm plateauing a little bit. What happens if I take birth control pills? So I took birth control pills, and I filled out, and I started gaining muscle quickly again. Then I also tried on the SARM cycle when I had crashed my estrogen too low, being on a SARM cycle for very long. Then I also took a D-ball and some other gear that converted into estrogen, and I noticed instantly muscle gains picked up big time. Like the SARMs by themselves were great, but the SARMs plus the estrogen was magical, which is why, and I'm not recommending you guys do this, but which is why like running a TRT, testosterone, along with SARMs, to me is the ultimate combination of balancing health, performance, fullness, looking good all year round. And that's what I do. I usually run a testosterone base with SARMs on top, being
I like that as
the best
well.
approach. So let's look at the estrogen range. So the average estrogen, we had to look up online what average was 27. Depends on the age also. So I made here something a little bit lower than the average and something a little higher than the average. Because if we're bodybuilding, sure, being at the average level of estrogen is okay, that's fine. But if we're trying to get shredded, that estrogen is going to make us hold a little bit of water, and it's also going to make it a little bit harder to burn fat, even at the average level. So dropping it a little bit below average should, and everybody is different, so someone might need more or less than this. But dropping it below average, but still, not too low, not zero, should still give us a lot of these health benefits, but still allow us to have some of the benefits of having lower estrogen, like less water retention and making it a lot easier to burn fat. Now, on the other extreme, if we go higher in estrogen, then we might be able to build more muscle. We might have more hormones to be able to combine with insulin and growth hormone to create more muscle building IGF. We might be able to volumize the muscles more. We might become stronger. And what I've noticed is when I'm looking at professional bodybuilders' blood works at Tony Huge Labs, I'm noticing some of these pro bodybuilders, when they're bulking, their estrogen levels are extremely high. And I think that's one of the factors in how successful a bodybuilder's bulk is, or how big these guys can get. I think their estrogen level has to go really high. It's just my experience. And also when a few cycles that I've done had absolute magical muscle gains, and one of them was when I let my estrogen go 44 times above normal, and I was gaining a pound of lean body mass every single day. Water also counts as lean body
Yeah, I
mass.
didn't even know that about the high estrogen. That is news to me. Dr. Hughes said that, just having an abundance of estrogen, holding that puffy look, while it might be unhealthy, you can gain substantial amounts of muscle. I was like, wow. Don't know if I'll give that a shot just because the health reasons, but hey.
So for the enhanced athlete, it's always a balancing act, because we're taking things that convert to estrogen like testosterone, Dianabol, a lot of the other gear that converts to estrogen, and so we want to balance it. If we're taking less than, just normally speaking, if we're taking less than 300 milligrams per week of testosterone, we're not normally using an aromatase inhibitor, and that will allow our estrogen to go up in the bulking range. If we were to use an aromatase inhibitor on 300 milligrams of testosterone, then we'd be right here in this range. Another critical thing about estrogen actually is we run into the problems like acne or like muscle loss or terrible fat gain or weakness when the estrogen and testosterone are out of balance. So if we want to gain maximal muscle or burn maximal fat, our testosterone always has to be much higher than our estrogen. So the higher our testosterone goes, the more we can afford for our estrogen to go higher. So if we have just normal testosterone, but we start getting our estrogen up in here, we're going to destroy our physique. The key is if we're going really high on the estrogen, we also have to be really high on the male androgens and the anabolics, so that we have to keep that ratio in mind. And that's a whole, we could talk for hours about keeping that ratio and what happens. I'll just give you one last example, is when people do a PCT after their cycle, right? What happens if someone does a steroid cycle and crashes their testosterone, and they don't do PCT? What happens, Akash? What happens to your clients if they do that?
If they don't do any PCT, they will develop gyno, depression, low testosterone, a whole myriad of side effects. No bueno.
Pretty much
bueno.
destroy their whole life.
Destroy your life.
Acne everywhere. And it's not because their testosterone is low so much as their estrogen is too high in relation to their testosterone. So you have to keep them in relation to each other. And I don't know how to explain all the different possible circumstances and ways to approach it other than spending hours to do it. So maybe in the future we'll just do another video where we take specific examples or specific questions, or I'll post on the Instagram story where people can ask questions about estrogen and bodybuilding and get more specific on.
So when you're saying there's a ratio of estrogen, let's call it right here, testosterone, let's say it's right here, always as a male, testosterone is going to be higher. Let's not put a number to this, but what you're saying is when one has an estrogen that, let's say, comes up here, best make sure that the testosterone equally still maintains that ratio of testosterone to estrogen at all times. And then as long as this ratio is maintained, then getting the estrogen up to higher amounts results in rapid muscle gain.
Exactly. There it is. There's the secret to bodybuilding and estrogen. Be swole and swole, friends of freedom, pioneers of human evolution.
I can't stop, keep it moving, get on another level. I won't stop, stay improving and I never settle. No backing down, no giving up, not even if I fall. No, I'm standing strong inside the fight, I have to take it on.